The night was a heavy, wet blanket draped over the town of Blackwood, Ohio. For Mark, the last bus driver on the route, it was just another Tuesday, the kind of night that blurred into the next, a slow, monotonous crawl through the empty streets. His bus, an old Ford, rumbled along the cracked asphalt, its headlights cutting through the gloom like a knife. The only sounds were the engine's steady thrum and the rhythmic swish of rain on the windshield. The town was asleep or pretending to be. Mark had driven this route for 15 years, and in that time, he'd seen it change from a bustling community to a quiet, dying place. People left for the city, for jobs, for a future that Blackwood couldn't offer. He stayed, tethered to the familiar hum of the engine and the solitude of the night. His final stop was the old quarry, a desolate pit on the edge of the woods, its jagged rock face a stark silhouette against the stormy sky. It was a place people avoided, a place with a bad reputation. On this particular night, the rain was coming down in sheets, and the wind howled like a mournful ghost. As Mark pulled up to the last stop, a lone figure was waiting. It was a man standing perfectly still under the flickering streetlight. He was dressed in a three-piece suit, the kind you'd see in an old photograph, the fabric a dark, heavy wool that seemed to absorb the light. He held a small leather-bound book in his hands, its cover worn smooth. He had no luggage, no coat to shield him from the rain. Mark, used to the occasional straggler, sighed and opened the doors. "Last stop," he called out, his voice a low rumble. The man stepped aboard, his shoes making no sound on the wet floor. He gave a single, slow nod, a silent thanks, and moved to the very back of the bus, sitting by the window. He never spoke. He just stared out into the darkness, his posture rigid and unnervingly still. When the bus reached the quarry, the engine idling, the man stood. He waited for Mark to put it in park, then walked down the aisle, his movements unnaturally smooth. He stepped out into the rain without a word of thanks or a backward glance, disappearing into the woods as if he had been waiting there all along. Mark thought nothing of it. A strange man on a stormy night. It happened. But the next night and the night after that, the same man was waiting at the last stop. Always there. Always in the same clothes. Always with the same book. He never got off at any other stop. Mark tried to start a conversation, his voice hesitant over the intercom. "Long night?" he'd say. The man would just turn his head, his eyes a pale, unreadable gray, and then turn back to the window. Mark began to feel a cold dread creep into his bones. It wasn't just the repetition, it was the wrongness of it. The man's reflection in the window sometimes seemed to lag behind his movements, a ghostly echo. One night, Mark noticed the man's hands were perfectly clean, despite the muddy roads. Another night, he saw that his shoes, though worn, were spotless, as if he hadn't walked on the dirt at all. He tried to talk to Gary, his dispatcher. "You know that guy at the last stop? The one in the suit?" Gary chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Mark, there's no one at that stop after 10. You've been driving too many night shifts. Go home, get some sleep." Mark felt a wave of frustration. Was he losing his mind? He started researching the town's history, poring over old newspaper microfilms at the library. That's when he found it. An article from the Blackwood Gazette, dated November 12, 1957. The headline read, "Prominent local businessman Elias Thorne vanishes without a trace." The accompanying photograph was a black and white portrait of a man in a three-piece suit, his face strikingly similar to the passenger. The article detailed Thorne's sudden disappearance. He was a wealthy, reclusive man, obsessed with the old quarry, convinced it held a secret that would make him untold riches. He was last seen heading toward the quarry on a stormy night, just like the passenger. He was never seen again. A chill ran down Mark's spine. The pieces were clicking into place and the picture they formed was terrifying. The passenger wasn't just a strange man, he was a ghost. A ghost trapped in a loop, forever heading to the quarry, forever waiting for a bus that would never take him where he wanted to go. The dread solidified into a cold, hard fear. He started to see the man in his peripheral vision even during the day. He'd catch a glimpse of a pale face in a shop window, or feel a presence behind him when he was alone. He tried to quit his job, but the dispatcher told him they were short-staffed. He was stuck. Then came the blizzard. A wall of white that swallowed the town whole. Mark was on his route, the bus groaning under the strain of the snow. The roads were treacherous. At the last stop, the man was waiting, his suit now dusted with snow, the book clutched tightly in his hands. As Mark pulled up, the engine sputtered and died. A final, rattling cough and then silence. The bus was dead. Stranded. The man stood in the aisle, blocking the way to the front. For the first time he turned to face Mark. His face was a mask of calm, but his eyes burned with an ancient, malevolent light. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out, only a low resonant hum that seemed to vibrate in Mark's very bones, a sound that felt like it was coming from inside his own skull. Then the man smiled and his face began to distort. The features smoothed away, becoming a featureless, pale expanse of skin, like a doll's face with the eyes and mouth erased. He took a slow, deliberate step forward. Panic, raw and primal, seized Mark. He pushed past the creature, shouldering it aside, and sprinted out into the blizzard. He ran for what felt like an eternity, his lungs burning, the snow stinging his eyes. He didn't stop until he collapsed at the edge of town, gasping for air. When he looked back, the bus and the passenger were gone, as if they had been a hallucination born of the storm. The next morning, the bus was found at the bottom of the quarry, wrecked but empty. There was no sign of the passenger, no sign of Mark's belongings. The town wrote it off as an accident. Mark quit his job. He couldn't sleep. He looked out his window at night, and sometimes in the distance, he thought he could see a lone figure standing at the end of his street, waiting patiently for a bus that would never come. The horror wasn't that the man was a ghost, but that he was a key to a secret the town buried long ago, and now that secret was aware of Mark. The story ends with Mark locking his doors and drawing the curtains, knowing the passenger will find another way to get to him. The suspense and mystery linger, leaving the audience to wonder what the secret of the quarry was and what, exactly, Mark has now become a part of.